Welcome to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. I'm Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
This show features questions from the Personality Hacker community that we answer in about 10 minutes. We've been using personality types in our coaching for years, and we'd love to answer your questions about personal growth through the lens of type. You can find out more about us at personalityhacker.com. Okay, now let's hear today's question.
Hi, Joel, Antonia, and the rest of the Personality Hacker team. My name is Eric, and my question is in regard to identifying with multiple personality types. I'll start with an example. My wife has tested as an ENFJ, but from my perspective, she's not strongly extroverted or introverted, but is instead somewhere in between. So as a result, she shows characteristics that at times seem to fit the description of an ENFJ, but at other times she can perhaps fit the description of an INFJ. As a disclaimer, of course, these are only my conclusions, and I'm not trained in personality typing. So my question, is it common for individuals to be identified with multiple personality types? Or when this occurs, do you recommend that such an individual do more research or introspection to eventually narrow down to a single personality type? Are there instances in which it's valuable for a person to identify with multiple types instead of a single one? Thank you.
Thanks, Eric, for the question. So your wife is an NFJ, most likely an ENFJ, but there's sometimes when she identifies as INFJ, sometimes as ENFJ. And I think the core of your question, and that's an example you gave, but the core of your question is it useful to maybe identify with different types, or is this common? Do people have characteristics or traits that show up from all different personality types? Can you just pick one? It's kind of a broad question I think you asked in a lot of ways.
Well, do you have to pick just one?
Yeah.
Or is it beneficial to identify with multiple types? I'm so glad that Eric gave an example because there were multiple things that you said, Eric, that I think we can speak to. The first thing you said is that your wife has tested as an ENFJ, but you're uncertain. So this idea of testing it as a specific type, I think, should probably be addressed first, which is that tests, or rather assessments, they're technically assessments and instruments. But when you come out as a certain personality type on an assessment, I wouldn't take that to the bank. I wouldn't go, oh, this is what my personality type is now. That's one of the big challenges, is that a person will run around and do every single assessment online. Not that your wife has done this, Eric, but there are a lot of people who do. And they come out with all different personality types. And there's a sense that undermines the system because a person can come out as multiple different types depending upon the time of day. The system accounts for that. It allows us to come out as a certain type in an assessment, but then do continued research and introspection and not have to attach oneself to that best fit type. Now, if a person takes the official Myers-Briggs type indicator, like the official instrument that has, 150 plus questions and has to be, given by a facilitator, I think that assessment probably carries more water. But even that one, which is considered the gold standard, has about a 20% error rate. Now, not wildly inaccurate. It's not like you're going to come out as a complete, like you're actually an ENFJ, but you tested as an ISTP. That's a lot more unlikely. Usually it's like one letter off when it's inaccurate, right? So that 20% error rate is, there's a lot of variables being accounted for here. And usually it's only one letter off, which I actually think is pretty impressive. That said, if you've taken the official Myers-Briggs type indicator and you've come out a certain type and you're still uncertain, I would see that as a more valid assessment result, and then I would believe that you're probably somewhere in the realm of whatever you came out as is that. And if it's one letter off, that kind of makes sense. That said, most online assessments are not that stringent, right? They haven't gone through decades and decades of refinement like the Myers-Briggs type indicator has. So I would say that any other online assessment, it's a starting point. It gives you a direction to head. And that includes ours, by the way. No online assessment is even close to 100%. So that's the first thing I'd like to address. The second thing is you mentioned that she feels like she has a little bit of both extroversion and introversion. Well, or you said that, right? Sometimes she feels more like an introvert. Sometimes she feels like an extrovert. And in other circles, they call that Ambiversion, right? And if you look at the deeper layer of personality as in the Myers-Briggs system, you're going to find that all of us are ambiverts, because the deeper layer of type when it comes to Myers-Briggs are the Jungian cognitive functions, those 4 functions that highly influence us. And when you start to look at the cognitive functions that live underneath those 4 letters, those 4 dichotomies, you're going to see that our first 2 functions, one of them is introverted and one of them is extroverted. And that's I'd say it's by design. I don't know if there's a designer, but it's really by design in the sense that we need both attitudes. We need to be able to access both our introverted, space and the extroverted space. And the reason for that is because we have to have a way to engage with who we are, right? That's our introverted part, is being able to know who we are inside. And then we have to have a way to interface with the outside world and get outer world feedback. And that's the extroverted part of us. And we need both of them. So if we have these 2 cognitive functions or mental processes that allow us to access both of these spaces, both an introverted and an extroverted space, then that means on some level, we're all going to identify as ambiverts. And sometimes it makes it difficult to really suss out which one is, more, that we're more associated with. Because these 2 top functions, while they give us access to these 2 worlds, they're not equal in weight when it comes to our relationship to them. One of those 2 cognitive functions is going to be a lot more compelling and interesting to us. It's going to give us a higher reward for using it. And that's why it comes first in the stack, what's called technically called your cognitive function stack. In the car model that we use, we call it the driver and the co-pilot. And the driver is definitely a much stronger function for us than the co-pilot function is. But one of them, again, is introverted and one's extroverted. And if we are at all a balanced person, we're going to identify with both of those elements.
And just a quick note here, we've actually recorded an entire almost hour-long podcast about the ambivert personality type. What is an ambivert? Unpacking these ideas. So if you search back a couple of years, we actually have a podcast that we've recorded about this subject specifically, and I'd recommend you go listen to.
Yeah, I think we unpack a lot of this. So that's in the specific case of introversion, extroversion. What about the others? Well, we also have an intuitive side and a sensory side. Those cognitive functions will show up in our cognitive function stack or our car model, no matter what our personality type is as well. And the same thing with thinking and feeling, and the same thing with judging and perceiving. There's nothing in there that indicates we are completely one-sided. We are a mixture of all of these things. So when you're looking at type, you're not looking for the thing you have. You're looking for the thing you prefer, because we have all of them. We have all of these elements inside of us. It's not a matter of having one and not having another. It's a matter of what order do we prefer to engage with these aspects of who we are. And that's what the cognitive functions tell us. It tells us what our preferences are. In fact, in type circles, particularly ones that are closer to the center, like that are associated with, sort of the old guard and the places we came from, you'll hear people say, I have preferences for, right? Like I wouldn't say I'm an ENTP. I would say I have ENTP preferences. And the reason for that is because I actually have all of them inside of me, but I have certain preferences for certain functions, and my preferences lead me to an ENTP preferential stack. So that's what that means. So then the question is, well, is there benefit to identifying with more than one personality type? And the answer is yes, no, and kind of. So a part of this is that we are trying to figure out what our personal preferences are, because once we nail those down, we can create an ergonomic environment that help those preferences out. Meaning that if I have ENTP preferences, I'm going to want to create a lifestyle that favors those preferences, or at least puts me in as strong an advantage as possible. If I have ENTP preferences, but I have a lifestyle that requires me to, say, do a lot of emotional management, it's going to make me grumpy. I'll be able to handle it to some extent, but I'm going to be grumpy all the time, and I don't want that. If I realize, actually, if I'm in a more sort of studious academic space where I'm able to get more into what's called my introverted thinking or accuracy function, that cognitive function, then I'm going to be a lot happier because I have thinking preferences. So knowing what your type is really beneficial to creating an ergonomic environment to that type. Now, we also want to make sure that we have other elements of ourselves accounted for. We don't want to be too one-sided, etc. But we do want to give ourselves a fair shake of it if at all possible. And the closer we get to knowing what that best fit type is, the more we can design a life that honors it. And we can make a lot of, sort of diagnostic assumptions, right? Like, is this that I'm broken? No, I just have different preferences than other people. Is this that I am traumatized? Well, no, I'm just never in an environment that is conducive to my type. Those are the kinds of things that you can discover once you know your best fit type. That said, you don't want to just nab one because one is the best. You don't want to just go, oh, well, I got to nail one. I got to be one. So I guess I'll just grab this one. You want to do a thorough investigation of the self and a thorough investigation of the system and find where they meet, right? You want to find that intersection of your best fit type. And that can sometimes take literally years. I know people who have gone through like our flagship program, Profiler Training, that have gone through the Profiler Training program, and they have been invested in personality types for, say, a decade. They get to Profiler Training, they go through, our class, our course, our embodiment exercises, and they discover, I have been mistyped this entire time. And they may have been enthusiasts, really super into type. But this is complicated stuff. It's complex. There's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot to the human, to the human condition, the psyche, the soul. There's a lot there. And then there's a lot to the system itself. So finding where they meet perfectly can take some time. And I would say it's better to identify with multiple types than to misidentify as the wrong type. So if you're still in a discovery space, give yourself time to go through this journey. If your wife is going on this journey, give her time and space to go through it. There's not advantage to settling on multiple different types and going, oh, well, I'm an INFJ and an INTJ. Well, what's happening there is that you've got feeling and thinking preferences, those two cognitive functions are functions that you're a little bit more balanced inside of you, a little more associated with. And so to say you're both types actually now gives you a misunderstanding of how the system works. It's better to nail that piece down and realize, no, actually, I have feeling preferences and it's extroverted feeling or harmony, because an INTJ has a completely different style of feeling. So to know what your function preferences are, to go into the hood and crack it open, to understand what those are in specificity, I think is very valuable. However, if you're just looking at something like ENFJ and INFJ, well, they have the same cognitive function preferences. They're just in a slightly different order. And so figuring out which one is your flow state, which one is where you gain your energy from, and then knowing that maybe the reason why she's having trouble determining between these two, or you as an onlooker are having difficulty determining, is because she's actually got these imbalance. This would be her driver and co-pilot. If you're an ENFJ, extroverted feeling or harmony is your driver, and introverted intuition or perspectives is your co-pilot. If you're an INFJ, you just reverse that. Introverted intuition or perspectives is your driver, and extroverted feeling or harmony is your co-pilot. Okay, well, which one is the stronger of the two? If your wife is well balanced, it may take her a while to figure out which one she's getting her energy from, which one she requires in order to feel like a complete person, which one she has to put a little bit more time and effort and energy into developing. That's where you're at with the NFJ. So there might be some value in taking time to really suss that out. And it's okay if you identify with both in the meantime. But like I mentioned, other types, if, like say, take, for example, she was trying to figure out INFJ or INTJ, those have totally different cognitive functions. So you're not going to be both of those. So really kind of figuring that out sooner rather than later, I think would be of advantage. So like I said, yes, no, and kind of. It depends on which types you're identifying with. It depends on why you're identifying with more than one. And at the end of the day, the theory, the philosophy around type is that, yeah, you do have one best fit type. So don't rush the process. Take time to figure it out. And then at the end of the day, when you know yourself well and you know the system well and you're able to merge those two things down into each other, you should have one best fit type.
Thanks, Eric, for the question. You can ask your own question about personality types or personal growth. Visit personalityhacker.com/questions. We also have programs designed to help you with your personal growth through the lens of personality types. Again, visit personalityhacker.com and find the program that's made just for you. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Thank you for listening to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. We'll talk with you on the next episode. If you're focused on personal growth, I think you'll resonate with our core content over at personalityhacker.com. We want to see you understand how your mind is wired so you can generate motivation, improve social skills, find career opportunities, and master excellent decision making. But a quick warning, we are advice and action focused in all of our articles, podcasts, and videos. This means that we attract people who like to be challenged to become excellent, to take action, to put in the work to optimize themselves, not simply just gather more information. If you are committed to personal growth and ready to radically find your inner truth, then come over and be a part of our growing community of like minds at Personality Hacker.